So instead of standing at the podium, I think it's after lunch, we're all a little relaxed. We want to hear about EVs and equity. I want to thank you for leading us. And to hear really about a groundbreaking project that has really changed how we feel about delivering infrastructure and enabling people to get to where they need to go, and living out that whole concept of equity, environment, access, and choice. One of the things I wanted to say as part of the work that I'm doing, Hilary Norton as the California Transportation Commissioner here today, is that one of the great opportunities with our state and federal funding is looking at sustainability and innovations in sustainability, especially when it comes to serving people who are very underserved. And one of the elements of the IIJA funding is a concept called the Justice 40 Initiative. And that is that 40% of all of the funding that we talked about today, over 40 billion going to the state, and 195 billion to be competed for federally, 40% of that money should be serving communities of need. So I'm very excited to have with me on this panel today one of the most talented groups of people talking about this concept of serving people in need and giving people that same access and choice that everyone else has come to expect, and achieving great things with it. Not the same kind of metrics we all talk about, but very different metrics, and I'm excited about that. So first, I want to let you all introduce yourselves, just a little 30-second introduction to each one of you, and then I'll start asking some questions. Marcel?
Sure, thanks, Hilary. Marcel Porras, I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for LADOT. I oversee the Bureau of Transportation Technology. We incubate a lot of new mobility projects, everything from the scooter pilot program to some advanced work around aerial mobility. Small team, but most recently, during the pandemic, we did a really sharp focus around equity and sustainability.
Mm-hmm. Great. Pleasure joining you all. My name is Madeline Brozen. I'm the Deputy Director for the UCLA Lewis Center for Regional Policy Studies. We focus on issues relating to the greater LA region and work on transportation equity and housing affordability. And I'm a transportation equity researcher myself.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Uribe, General Manager for BlueLA Powered by Blink Mobility. You know, I've been in this space since 2008, and I never thought that we would see a day when we're actually talking about the electrification of a car share program. So it's going to be an amazing 45 minutes, and thank you for this opportunity to participate.
Wonderful. Marcel, you know, we are now over the COVID, one of the things that didn't seem to go away was superhero movies. And so we seem to have one a month, and all of them were about a great origin story. So considering that BlueLA has been one of the superheroes of being able to deliver some great, clean infrastructure, let's talk about the origin story of BlueLA and how you came to be part of it in your 15 years with the city of Los Angeles.
Yeah, so, you know, I was found by a river, by electric, so, you know, like Maddie, I'm also urban planner, UCLA, born and raised in Southern California. I had the unique opportunity to work as a transportation legislative deputy starting in 2009 for a really young upstart council member that goes by the name of Eric Garcetti. And at that time, he was really looking, not a lot of transportation deputies were like main hires in political offices. And you know, I applied to a job. He was looking for someone with transportation background or environmental sustainability background. And I started off and really had like a baptism by fire experience in those early days working in Council District 13, which covered like Hollywood, Echo Park, Silver Lake, Atwater. It was one of the most low-income communities in the district. Already was served by a lot of high-density transportation, the Red Line, a lot of Metro Rapid buses. The main stuff that we were working on was like safe routes to school, pedestrian work, bicycling work. And really early on in those days, as Michael discussed, there was kind of like the beginning of car sharing in the city. And so we worked really closely in those days in the council office to create a pilot program that actually allowed and set aside on-street parking for free for Zipcar. Fast forward, we really tried to actually move that pilot into an implementation phase, did an RFP, selected a main operator to do this citywide. We talked about equity, scaling, and at the end of the day, they just did not perform. They won the bid, they walked away from it, and we were just, okay, well, where do we go from here, right? Fast forward, the mayor gets elected, fast forward 5 years, 4 years, he gets elected. He's one of the first, he's the first mayor to establish a mayor's office of sustainability that was led by Matt Peterson, the first chief sustainability officer, formerly with, what was the organization that he was with? No, before Lacey. I don't know, some other environmental organization. And so he got to work in developing a sustainability plan. And as part of that sustainability plan, they also made sure to not create an unfunded mandate. So they created sustainability officer positions throughout the city. A couple years later, I actually took charge as the sustainability officer for LA DOT. At the same time, the state was issuing funding, grant dollars through the Cap and Trade Fund here in the state of California, specifically focused on mobility innovation. So at that point, it was kind of our first opportunity to kind of really pitch and see, after our failed attempt with a real comprehensive car sharing program in the city, we said, hey, we have $1.5 million. Who wants to do car sharing? Who wants to make it EV, and who wants to do it in low income? And there was just crickets. All the major players, the Avis, Hertz, Zipcar, all these companies, Car2Go, they're like, yeah, that's not gonna happen, right? Well, we had two companies step up, and one of them that ended up being the initial company was the company that had created the EV car sharing model out of France in Paris. Some of you may have known as Autolib. And so they were a large multinational company, had deep pockets, were able to really spend dollars and take a risk, right, on doing this. And so that was kind of the origin story of that program. And with that, it was okay, let's go out and create a tiger team with all of the city departments. How do we actually do this? How do we go out and get input from the community? So we created a steering committee of nonprofit advisors. And so that really was the beginning of it. Just last week, I think, Sarah, we celebrated the 4th birthday of the launch of the initial pilot program and station that was at LA Trade Tech. Before that was at Pico Union, MacArthur Park area, really focused on low income. Just to be able to pass it over to my colleagues, then the pandemic hit, right? So we had started seeing the success of actually seeing infrastructure built into the ground, seeing these bespoke cars that they built and they brought from Italy or France. It was funny. And then the pandemic hit. And not too long after the pandemic hit, our partner decided to kind of just exit the market globally. And they had been in Italy, they had been in France, they had been in Indianapolis. And so it was this really moment where, again, as a public sector partner, we were like, well, how's this, where do we go from here, right? Fortunately, there's a lot of innovation and technology in the space. There's a lot of folks who are seeing kind of the future and the need for electric mobility. And so we're fortunate that Blink Mobility, also Blink Charging, stepped in to take over the responsibility and really rapidly swapped all of the chargers in the city to their chargers, went out and brought new vehicles. And now we're here, right? We're just trying to say we're holding on, wow, okay, we did that, but now we're still trying to kind of figure out how do we keep on growing?
Yeah, that's great. And thank you, Marcel, because I think you've all seen that these new projects require equal doses of innovation, brilliance, and just tenacity and being able to just gut it out, right? And so, Michael, let's talk about gutting it out. and what it means to start in some ways new and to continue the old, but to deliver the same kind of promise that the community has been really enjoying for the last 4 years. And what's your vision about what you're doing now, and what's your vision for the future?
You know, so I don't change jobs. I'm one of those guys, right? So I was with Zipcar for 12 years. I loved what I do. I love bringing vehicles to communities so that people don't need to spend all that money on a second car. They can save the money, they can invest it back into their local communities. That's what I love. That's why I'm here. So when this opportunity came, I lived in Portland, and this opportunity came to me, I thought, wow, the future's finally here, right? But I had a talk with my boss prior to getting hired, and he said, Michael, it's not easy. We're the largest electric vehicle car share company in the United States, and there's a reason for that, because it's hard work. You know, we think about, just earlier today, we were thinking about utilization. Utilization, typically, when we think about it, is based on a 24-hour cycle of a vehicle being used. Well, with electric vehicles, they can't run 24 hours, because a Chevy Bolt only has, which are the cars we have in our fleet, only have a maximum range of 259 miles for the charge. But then, you know, that's not if you throw on the radio, and if you're in LA driving, you definitely have on the AC. So your and most people speed around here too, right? So the battery gets drained really low. Maddie was just saying that on the way in here, there was an availability issue because everything was recharging. So I was talking to my boss, and, you know, I kind of did my homework, and you know what sold me on the company is that I read Blink charging has always been for accessible and equitable charging stations and electric vehicles, regardless of zip code. And I thought, this is my job. This is me. Like, I'm getting chills right now for doing it, you know? And you know, where do we go from here? I don't have the book of plays, you know, but I have the tenacity and I have the patience to do this. And every day I learn something different. And I've been doing this for 15 years. So yeah, we're doing it.
Describe a little bit about today for the audience. How many cars do you have out there? What are the things that you want people to know? How much does it cost to use the system?
Thank you. So today we have about 100 vehicles out in our fleet, and those are Chevy Bolts, 100% electric vehicles. It's actually a really good city vehicle. Maximum range is about 259 miles per charge. It could take up to 11 hours to charge, depending on what level that charge is or how drained the battery is. We have about 2,000 members, and of our 2,000 members, 34% of them are actually what we call community-based members. So these members they live in disadvantaged communities. And because they live in disadvantaged communities, this goes back to who Blink is, right? Blink Mobility. We offer these community-based members, their membership's $1 a month. That's pretty amazing, right? And then by the minute, it's 15 cents a minute. That's about $9 an hour. I can't even go on the street right now and buy a slice of pizza for $9, right? And then we have a couple packages for community members. We have a 3-hour package, which is $15. So you're telling me that somebody can get into one of my cars, go to the grocery store, or go take mom or dad or somebody, their kid, to the hospital, go pick somebody up, and it's only gonna be $15? It's not even the cost of Uber. Plus I pay there's no fuel, and plus I cover the insurance. The best thing is, in my opinion, is that we have a 5-hour package. And that 5-hour package, it's 5 hours of unlimited miles up to just at the 24-hour mark. And well, the 5 hours, it's $25. So think about that, $25. If you're a struggling parent or just a struggling college kid, $25 for access to a vehicle for 5 hours, it makes me feel good.
That's great. And how many users have you had so far?
Great, thank you. You're keeping me on track. We have about 2,000 users year to date, and as of January 1st, we've grown our membership base 54%. So that's impressive. And our average trips, we see about anywhere between 600 and 758 unique trips every single week. To date, that accounts for 2,500 Belkis, what's that number?
Over 200,000 pounds. You're talking about the CO2?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over 200,000 pounds.
Yeah, so our trips have, thank you. Our trips have not necessarily eliminated, but because it's an electric vehicle, there's no emissions. Over 200,000 pounds of CO2 emissions have been eliminated just because of electric vehicles. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah. And one last question, then I'll move to Madeline. Who can use the system?
Yeah. Listen, anybody can use the system. You just have to be approved, right? If you're a community-based member, if that's what you sign up for, you just have to have the credentials to qualify for that membership base. Or other people can sign up just under our standard membership. And even standard membership, it's 25 cents a minute. It's pretty economical. So standard memberships or disadvantaged community memberships.
That's great. Madeline, as a researcher, I think thinking about what do these opportunities grant people and what are we taking off the streets? What is it allowing? Can you talk a little bit about your research and what you found?
Yeah, I mean, so our as a transportation equity researcher, you're a lot of times just looking at what happens when people don't have access, right? Like, what are they not really doing in their life? And it's frankly can be a little depressing. So it's really nice to have the opportunity to be engaged in evaluation of interventions like BlueLA to really understand, like, what is the impact it's having on people's lives? Because transportation at the end of the day is kind of a middleman. It's really just this connector that's allowing people to get to where they need to go. So through the partnership with LADOT and Blink, we did 35 interviews, so about 30-minute conversations with members. We split it half among the standard members and the community members. We just really had a conversation, which is really nice, just to talk to people about, how to use transportation. What do you use the car to do? How else do you get around? Do you own a car? And like, what impact is this having on your lives? And really what we're finding is just a really high level of satisfaction across everyone, which is really exciting, I think, for the opportunity of these. Most of the time, people are just using it for the big shops. They're getting the car for the 3 or 5 hour package, and they're getting to go wherever they want. They're getting a sense of liberation. When you don't have a car, which most of the members that we spoke to don't, on both sides of the program, you're really limited. You're going to kind of, you're as a kind of an economist, we talk about the least cost. What is the closest grocery store that I can go to because I have a limited amount of time. And it gave people, I really like to go to the Trader Joe's that's by USC, not the one that's by my house. Or I need to go pick up stuff for my job. So that's a lot of what we heard was just kind of people that would pool all of their errands kind of into one day, use that so they could live the other days of their week using public transit. I mean, there are 40 stations. They're all located in what's called priority population tracts that the state has designated. So there are places that do have good public transit otherwise, right? And it's really fitting into kind of part and parcel with their lives. And I think, the other thing that's really exciting is that because there's this lower price eligibility, a lot of times you don't actually hear from people that the sign up for some of these discount programs is easy. It's actually a lot of the place where the friction happens, where people just don't sign up or they just have to spend a lot of time. And the nice thing about how the BlueLA sign-up is set up, and we just heard across the board that people, we asked kind of these satisfaction questions. They were like, oh, no, that was pretty easy. Maybe it took a couple of days, but it wasn't bad. So it was really using kind of cross-eligibility. So you can be eligible for the community membership based on your income, but for a lot of low-income people, it's really actually hard because you're working a bunch of jobs to actually kind of say, this is what my annual income is. But you can use cross-eligibility. So if you have CalFresh or food stamps, if you have Social Security supplement, if you have CalWorks or like welfare, I think there's a couple of others too, but just to make sure that people that are already getting benefits, that this is a mobility benefit that really gives them autonomy over their lives.
That's great. And since this is an infra day, let's talk about the infrastructure. So Marcel, can you talk a little bit about curb infrastructure, what the charging looks like, and then what you think is going to be necessary in order to scale up and what that infrastructure is going to need, and how can we in the audience be part of the support to really get these projects to happen at scale? Because you're right, a lot of the sort of life of a lot of these pilots is not very long.
Yeah, so and again, I'm not sure if this was Michael's description, but Maddie mentioned that there's 40 hubs. Each hub is 5 contiguous on-street parking spaces with an individual charger, right? The reason to do that, we did the 5 chargers is because economies of scale. If you're gonna dig and you're gonna upgrade the below ground infrastructure to support the charging, it's not gonna make sense to do 1 charger or 2 chargers, right? So how do you actually do more chargers? I will say our Bureau of Street Lighting does have a lot of electric vehicle chargers, and it's usually like a 1 or 2 station system because they're just drawing power straight from the street pole, right? But as we're actually doing the hubs, we're having to trench and prepare the infrastructure to support. And that's why also one of the main factors in making the partnership work and making it worthwhile is that the pilot had to be, that investment has to be amortized over time. And so that is one of the things that the city brings to the table and says, okay, what's the term, right? In terms of how long it's gonna take for our partner to recoup their investment and hit kind of the profitability that they're gonna want in the program. You know, I think one of the big learnings that we really had to do was pulling together a tiger team of all of the different permitting departments and sign-off departments that existed within the city. The Department of Water and Power, the Bureau of Engineering, Urban Forestry, Bureau of Street Lighting, our parking group, you know, and some of that was, you know, Sarah, raise your hand, Sarah. Sarah was kind of our partner on the BlueLA side in the meetings, right, with this master spreadsheet tracker, you know, every Wednesday. If it wasn't Sarah, it was my project manager showing up with a box of donuts, you know, just to make sure that we were on track because we had this investment from the state. We had our private sector partner, and so it really was and has been a partnership in trying to clear roadblocks. One of the challenges is that, you know, I could have a team member, you know, doing that, but if that department doesn't have an electrical engineer dedicated to this, right? And that's the thing, right? It's not that we just are working on electrical on EV charging infrastructure, right? Development continues to boom in the city. And so there are a lot of competitions on all of these departments. And so how do you actually prioritize that? And I think it really was because the mayor's office really was like, this is a priority. And at some point, you know, you have that meeting, that reset. Hey, what's going on? What do you need? Oh, you know what? We need some more dollars for permitting, to waive permitting costs, right? And you actually have to iterate and problem solve in order to do that. Right now, you can, I believe, you can go try to install a charger as an individual company, but it's just gonna take you forever, right? And so I think that was one of the things that we were able to do in clearing the pathway.
So with all the cities and agencies, transit agencies that are here, do you see BlueLA being a component of a transit stop, for example? How do you see sort of your next steps of utilization so that we're continuing to support, because you can, I think another key element of the program is it's pick up and drop off anywhere, right? So you don't have to pick it up and take it back to where you got it. It could go anywhere, right? You can park it at any...
That's correct. That's the beauty of it. It really fits our lifestyle when we travel. You can pick it up, it's round trip or one way, whichever. And I think to Marcel's point earlier, you know, I think another headwind that we continuously face is we, I think, as just general constituents in the public, need to start thinking of parking differently, right? Because if one vehicle reportedly one electric vehicle reportedly removes 10 vehicles from the road. That's significant. So the one charging station with 5 vehicles, right? That's a lot of cars, and that's a lot of CO2. And so people just have to, we just have to rethink parking.
But I think because I want to dig into a little bit more, and Maddie, I think you're going to get there, about how we can't have transit going everywhere at all times. Right. So Maddie, can you talk a little bit about what this helps replace and how much more this can extend transit's reach?
Yeah, I mean, it's this, you know, really part of someone's mobility package. That's really where BlueLA is fitting in, you know, like, we would ask them, you know, when we were having these conversations, like, do you own a car? When was the last time you owned a car? And I think in comparison to maybe kind of Zipcar, more traditional models, this weren't what you'd hear as shedding, right? Like that's actually where you really get some of the long-term greenhouse gas reduction parts, is where you are making households own fewer cars, right? Because like if you have a car in your driveway, you're going to drive it. You just have a sunk cost to it. It's just how it works. And so these households, there was kind of a spectrum. It really wasn't like very like, there were a few people that were like, it was funny. We're trying to kind of make categorize these people. So it's very much a, work in progress. Everyone's kind of getting a sneak peek to at this moment. But people that had moved from other places, and they're like, I moved from another place. I didn't have a car. This was really good for me to like figure out how the city works. But really what we heard more of is that, no, I can't afford a car. Like it's just very much out of my financial reach. Or people that had broken down cars in their driveway, and they were able to use a BlueLA membership as like a temporary bridge so they could actually, save money and then maybe fix their car. And so it really was kind of an exciting part of the package. And I just want to pick up on the parking point too, is that because where these stations are located, a lot of it is our very old development in the city, especially Koreatown, Pico Union downtown, where there is not a lot of parking. Like I lived in Koreatown. I sold my car because it was just, I would move it more for street cleaning than I'd actually like get the utility out of it. It was also really old and like, let's cash out before this actually, has no value. But, so we'd actually hear that from people too. They were like, I don't want to own a car. It's expensive to me, but there's no parking in my building. So this is really just being able to have access to a car when I just need it, which saves me money in the long run. But it's also that we don't need every trip doesn't have to be done in a car. Some can be on transit, some can walk, and then you can just plug in this kind of into your life in particular places.
Again, going back to some of the infrastructure conversations, what are you finding in terms of charging efficiency? Because I think one of the big complaints about non-monitored chargers is that you have a lot of cars that are just parked in front of it and no one else can charge. Can you talk about, Blink I know is working very hard at more charging efficiencies. What are you seeking now to increase that?
Yeah, right now all of our chargers are kind of closed circuits. Only a BlueLA car can charge there. But what we're working with the city and Marcel's team is that we're going to open a portion of those stations up for public charging as well. And what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow, one, it's going to build more confidence in overall EV infrastructure, and it's just going to be able to see it as an environmental win as well. But two, I think it's going to eliminate angst about how far can I go,
I think the other thing too, and I think the importance of opening it up, like we're still in a pilot, right? We have to see if there's, if it's going to be financially viable, right? And I know me, Maddie, and Michael, we all talk about this, and Maddie, I want to hear your perspective on it. But for an investment, leveraging CARB dollars, leveraging the Department of Water and Power's EV charging rebate, which is about $5,000, our charger, by using some of our staff time, by bringing all of these different revenue pieces, like we're still open to looking for more revenue models, right? I think you have infrastructure that you've put on the public right of way. How do you actually think openly about how to make it a multi-benefit project, right? My colleague and general manager, Miguel Sangalong over there, is thinking about smart cities and the role of the Bureau of Street Lighting in doing broadband and smart city connection stuff. We are too, right? And we've partnered on trying to think about, can a BlueLA station also be a broadband hub, right, for 5G? Right, as we go into a community, into a low-income community, and saying, hey, we're going to bring this to your community to create access and more mobility solutions. Maybe we also bring broadband and 5G to create another level of access, right? Or maybe we're also starting to think about connected, infrastructure as we prepare for the future of autonomy, right? And so it's like, how do you continue to look at the opportunities? Prior to this operator, Blink Mobility, and in our negotiations with the predecessor, we're learning as public level staff about what this means, different revenue opportunities. And there was some fine print in the initial contract negotiation that really referenced very vaguely wireless systems and wireless networks. So that kind of like scratching my head because we were dealing with like 50 deal points. And then I finally just clicked. And I'm like, wait a second. Like there's a lot of specificity about wireless networks in here. And like, I don't think we have that jurisdiction. And then we just like, I'm like, hey, city attorney, can you take a look at this? And we're like, red marker out, right? Because it was kind of like trying to sneak in some of this like revenue opportunity that was kind of backdooring a public process. And so I think it's those opportunities on the public sector side that you really have to kind of do your homework and build your team of advisors to help navigate these new projects.
Yeah. And looking at the Justice 40 opportunities, how can we start delivering some of these opportunities, as you're saying, for EV, for broadband, et cetera, so that we could put forth projects that are really geared towards the equity, geared towards the infrastructure that doesn't exist or is very seldom, so that we could actually elevate this for this high need system.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to start thinking about transportation. I mean, we think about this, and we try to at least kind of get people to think about this in terms of public transportation, that transportation is a social service. Mm-hmm. It's a public good. That's right. And it's difficult, I think, in the current funding situation because we're not really there yet in terms of how we're paying for these things. So in California, we have a really robust, and in terms of the revenue from cap and trade, at least at the particular moment, which, is not always as stable as would be most ideal. But so, the Air Resources Board that's distributing these revenues, I mean, they can't even get the money out fast enough. I mean, so the clean mobility options programs that they run, they are oversubscribed by a bunch of different providers. And I think that's the other exciting thing, is that it's not just departments of transportation or private companies, it's housing providers that want to start offering this. So we're involved with a really exciting project that's funded through the Clean Mobility Options Voucher Program through the Housing Authority of Los Angeles, where they want to do a vehicle lending library, an electric vehicle lending library, kind of as a new iteration on this, And so how are we really connecting with development and housing? Because we know, kind of going back to the emissions part, that if we can make it so that people are just using cars when they need them and not all the time, that's where we need to actually have the reductions. And so as we're thinking about development opportunities in the city, there is a transportation demand management menu that people can pick off of. But I don't think we're there yet in terms of saying, okay, I want to buy a BlueLA station in front of my, new housing so I can build less parking. How do I pay for it, right? Because that's another potential revenue source.
So I think that gets to some of the, where are the public-private partnerships? And also, can you speak a little bit to the concept of mobility altruism? Do you see that there might be even a Tom's Shoes model where you say that you're going to actually choose to charge at the Blink chargers for BlueLA, but you're going to charge at a certain rate so that you can contribute to people that are low income being part of BlueLA getting to charge at a different rate?
I mean, definitely. I mean, I think looking when we put together the model initially, we definitely were thinking about how does EV charging revenues potentially subsidize the low income rate of the car sharing program, right? And so it's definitely, and also the openness to thinking at new revenues to support the program. So I think that's definitely a piece of it. And I think getting back to what Maddie was saying, also just trying to use this program, as well as another concept that I'm going to talk about in a second, to shift federal policy and state policy about what are we funding. So earlier today, Michael and a couple of us were at a press conference this morning announcing the launch of our Universal Basic Mobility Pilot Program in South Los Angeles, where we're bringing $18 million to South LA to test a suite of mobility options. We have about $4 million set aside for 2,000 mobility wallets that will be distributed to qualifying low-income members in South LA. And they will be able to, the backbone of that is our regional transportation system, Metro, and their TAP wallet. And we're working with private sector partners via NDA, ride-sharing companies, dockless mobility companies, BlueLA, taxis, to really be able to use a wallet, a digital wallet, and analog where it needs to because of the equity considerations. But that pilot is gonna run for 12 months on the wallet. It's gonna serve 2,000 individuals, and it's gonna be loaded with $150 so that people can choose. Hey, right now I wanna take the bus. But you know what, later on tonight, I'm a woman and I don't feel as safe, right, sitting at the bus stop, or I actually wanna go to my medical appointment on the west side because there's a better medical specialist, yep. Or I want to take my kids to the beach, right? And so we're also starting to kind of really think deeply about what is the return on investment of these dollars, right? Are we looking at cost per rider, mm-hmm. or are we starting to measure other socioeconomic factors in how we think about mobility and access?
That's great. And I want to thank you for being a man who's thinking about women traveling at night. Again, big ups to you all who do that.
And that's LADOT and Metro and Salita Reynolds and Stephanie Wiggins and Maddie Brozen. I'm just echoing what the good work.
And I know Michael's going to tell us more about how you're going to help women travel safely.
To follow up on one of your questions about how we influence change, something that Maddie said, I think that if there are developers in this room, you're probably not going to like me, but I think we need to set policy that really reduces the ratio of parking spots per units. A subterranean parking spot that's striped costs about $275,000. Right? That's a lot of money. And you think about these parking structures around us that have all this parking. So how many more affordable housing units could we build because of a BlueLA powered by Blink Mobility charging station? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's once we dig the big hole in the ground, we've really cast in concrete a very bad future in terms of the environmental parts of it. It's just really hard to convince people that they should get around other ways when we just made it so easy for them to drive. But that's just not the case with the people I think that BlueLA are serving. There's really a bifurcation, unfortunately, of kind of transportation access. And we see how, it's come up historically in Los Angeles and the Kerner Report in the 60s, after the uprising in the 90s, that transportation is really driving, and the lack thereof, driving inequality, right? And so the Universal Basic Mobility Program, I think, is a really exciting opportunity to give people autonomy, right? It's the same concept, which is more common, or is kind of a little bit further along, of universal basic income, right? Is that what people need is money, and they know what's best for their lives. And so rather than saying, oh, well, this community can have this kind of transportation or that bridge, it's just to do kind of the cash is the best way to let people kind of decide so that they can, use different things depending the opportunity. And I think LA has been a really exciting leader because doing these different pilots, having LADOT and LA Metro working on both gender equity and racial equity as they're really doing this, because if we're just kind of thinking about infrastructure for infrastructure's sake, which I'm not at all saying that is happening in this room, but just as a mindset, it's not really targeting the people who need it the most, and I think is going to really help us in the long term.
So in our last 5 minutes, as we talk about the infrastructure and how we can have infrastructure expand choice, what do you see, Marcel, as you're working with the mayor's office to go after investments in EV infrastructure writ large so that we could have a lot more of these stations and, frankly, bus charging and everything else? Talk a little bit about what you're doing with the city's vision about going after these funds to really expand EV mobility of all types in all realms of infrastructure, and then how BlueLA fits in.
We're not just working with the mayor's office, but we're working really closely with the city council. I think there's a couple of council members who are really trying to push the envelope on electrification. And we're working with our partners at the state and at the federal government, really trying to prepare to take advantage of all of the dollars coming down the pipeline. I think that one of the biggest challenges that cities are facing is just staffing, right? I mean, and I think that's gonna be a really, important factor to take into account. Like we're eligible, like we're really successful at bringing dollars in, but I think to hire a staff person can sometimes take a year and a half, 2 years, right? And you have to go through the budget cycle, request the position, then they approve the position, and then then the position gets filled like a year later. So that's going to continue to be an issue. I think the other thing that's a concern is just inflation, right? And the increasing costs of delivering the projects. And so I think there's going to need to be a kind of right sizing and some strategically thinking about building local capacity to deliver. But I think what we're doing really well is like partnering with like our sister agencies. And so we believe that BlueLA really serves as a complement, right? I think one of the things that the region has been really successful in doing in the past 12 years is bringing local return dollars through Measure R, Measure M. We have a ton of heavy rail, light rail, bus-only lane projects that are in the pipeline. And we really see BlueLA as well as bike share and e-bike libraries really kind of filling in the gaps to augment that service. And the last thing I'll say, Hilary, is that, I want to, like, we have to be, like, we're over here talking about equity, but we have to talk to residents, right? We have to talk to residents and the community engagement models. If you guys aren't doing this work, you have to build capacity at the local level. So part of the work that we're doing through this Universal Basic Mobility pilot is we have a resident advisory committee that we've selected. We're funding them. They get paid to come to meetings. We're giving them training to participate and sit at the table in a feedback loop to say, hey, this works, this doesn't, right? And in some instances, they're saying, I don't want car sharing in my, like, parking is, you're gonna take my parking away? Right? And so, like, there are some real factors about it. And, like, that's the thing where it's like, my boss says this all the time, you access 12 times more jobs if you have a car.
That's right. Right?
And that's like a car on the ready. And right now we're not ubiquitous enough to really fill that gap. And so my thing is we're going to be up to 300 cars and 500 chargers in a year and a half. But let's get up to 50,000 cars, right? And 100,000 chargers, right? So. Okay.
Well, that's wonderful. We are at the 1 minute warning, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and then Madeline, I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds. So, Michael?
Thanks, Marcel.
Yeah, really.
No, listen, it's for Blink charging or Blink mobility. It's all about the vision of providing affordable and equitable, regardless of zip code, access to electric vehicle chargers and electric vehicles. So it sounds simple. It is. I'll give you more time.
Well, I mean, I think that, to pick up on what Marcel is saying, and I think it's really been a theme that I've heard people speaking about, is that it's about collaboration, and that, what we've really been able to do with having academia, working with the private sector and the public sector is really have, I think, a useful feedback loop. The other part of that is really the resident engagement and moving at the speed of trust. I mean, most people actually just happen to see we spoke to just saw the cars on the street, right? But the average person, is not going to feel, because you're operating the whole car with your phone. And so, it takes some level of kind of comfort, and some of the other programs, I think, are really making sure that they have another training partner kind of on that. And so I think to really use all the resources you can to deliver this, iterate, and make it a real part of people's lives.
Wonderful. Well, that's our time. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation and listening to us today. Thank you so much.